So to burrow a little bit deeper into some of these industry-specific software tools, the features they have within them, I'm interested how important design and documentation integration is when it comes to software selection.
I think that 100% depends on the need to provide that document or develop that documentation and provide that documentation, which, if it's your typical project or average project size is, say, sub 50,000, there's probably not a very real need to develop detailed documentation for that project in the way of engineering drawings. They can probably be assembled pretty quickly, and it's a pretty standard solution that you've done often. So in that case, there's not a particularly high need. If the projects that are being performed by your company are larger, so 100,000 plus, you'll get up to $250,000 or even larger, then there is a need for project documentation. And then whether it's integrated into this all-in-one solution or separate, and the value of that has a lot to do with whether there's an engineering team and engineering process that's already in place prior to bringing the software in, or whether that didn't exist before. So if it didn't exist before, then like implementing the embedded engineering solution is always going to be faster, like 5 or 10 times faster than doing it outside the box using AutoCAD or some other Bluebeam or some other tool. That's already a motion that's in place and a team that's in place and trained on that, then there's not as much value to bring it and integrate it into the all-in-one solution or the end-to-end solution. But there is some value, and I'll highlight a couple of those. One is that if the drawings are being done in one piece of software by a team, and the bill of materials or the system design and proposal is being developed by another team, and they're a different set of tools, then they're not necessarily in sync. It's hard to match that bill of materials to the drawing precisely. Whereas I'll use details as an example just because it's the software that I know the best. But with System Integrator, which has a full engineering suite associated with it, the drawings and the bill of materials are always necessarily in sync because that's the only way the software works. And when you create a change order, for example, and you take something out of the bill of materials, there's a void on the drawing. I mean, it got pulled right off the drawing, and there's a hole in the drawing. So they have to be synchronized, and there's a lot of value in that. When you're a technician in the field, calls the office and said, hey, do you want me to work off the drawings or work off the bill of materials because they're different? That's a problem. I mean, you got to dig into it and try to answer that question. So that's one of the reasons to take your current engineering motion, if you got one, and tools and embed it into the end-to-end solution that's designed for the industry.
Team size and project size, I think, count for a lot. So you hit on the idea of project size. Smaller projects maybe don't need a full deployment set. We worked on multi-six-figure projects on every project, and every project had a full deployment set. It was the only way that we could get our project management team, installation team, rack build team, programming team, and then ultimately our service team to know what was happening on a job. There was no other way to do that than without having a deployment set. It also then circulated to the lighting designer, to the architect's office, to the GC's office. And so here's another really interesting one, which is rev control. And you didn't hit on it in your discussion, but it's a big one. As soon as a new rev of those box sets come out, it needs to be deployed to lots of humans, both inside and outside of your office. And so if you try to imagine doing rev control in a separate piece of software from your ERP tool, purchasing tool, etc., it becomes very, very tricky. And that was actually the world that we lived in. We actually lived in a CAD-based environment for our drawing sets, and then we lived in a separate ERP tool for everything else. It was unpleasant. It would have been great if it was fully integrated. Unfortunately, it just wasn't. And so I think it's also knowing who the audience is that you're trying to work with. In our case, we had shifted away from a Visio model to a CAD model. And when we shifted towards that CAD model, it was to better align to architects, lighting designers, etc. And now our docs were natively deployed inside of their ecosystem. It made us a better partner. The flip side to that was we ate the human capital costs to make that happen between our pieces of software. In today's world, there's actually a really interesting strategy where you might say, I would like to integrate a disparate software tool for our drawing sets back with an ERP and actually integrate them through a separate piece of software. So that is possible. And I think for teams that are actually at scale, that would be a perfectly viable thing to do. And I think most companies would benefit from it.